Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm starting with a conversation with ChatGPT, but I don't want this one. I want my ChatGPT. I want my ChatGPT. So we're gonna do constitutional tribunal. Okay, see, it's already there. Stop listening. Okay, there we go. Whew. We just asked it. Are you familiar with the Civil Rights Act of 1866? The Act protects all persons in the United States in their civil rights and furnish a means of vindication. Now, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, enacted via this statute, is a congressional act that established that all persons born in the United States and not subject to the foreign powers of any other state. Uh, Wake up, hold on. Wake up. I'm sorry, you missed the point that section number 3 makes it clear that it applies to persons not born in the United States, but who have had their civil rights violated. So the act applies to anyone within the jurisdictional borders of the United States, including what's referred to as illegal aliens, comma, because the president has decided he's going to deport them without due process of law, and this act says the president doesn't get to do that. Stop listening. Want you to pay attention to what it says. Under Section 3 of the Civil Rights Act, it establishes penalties for persons who, under authority and color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom, subjects any inhabitant of any state or territory to the deprivation of any rights secured by the Act. The language in Section 3 uses the term inhabitant, not strictly limited to protecting persons born in the United States, and therefore its protections are extended to all inhabitants. Those of you who are sitting up here trying to protest against the deportation and all of that stuff, you're using the wrong tools. This allows you to use the Civil Rights Act and the Habeas Corpus Act of, I think the Habeas Corpus Act was of 1863. Okay? Now, hold on now. We put this in here. Doesn't get to do that. That's bill that. We don't want to bill nobody. Do that. Hold on now. Now, look. Ain't no attorney going to tell you all this. Now, look what it said, the response. Section 3 of the Civil Rights Act states that any inhabitant in any state or territory, okay, any inhabitant, sorry, I'm looking at my cameras because my front door is partially open and I got to go and lock it down. Anyway, so any inhabitant in any state or territory is protected from the deprivations of rights secured by the Act, regardless of race or color, and irrespective of whether the individual was born in the United States. The use of the word inhabitant includes all persons physically within the territorial jurisdiction and boundaries of the United States. And the statute does not make exceptions. See, this was before the United States was considered a corporation. 1866. The Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution provides that no person doesn't have to be a citizen. Everybody keeps thinking the Bill of Rights applies to citizens. No, it does not. The Bill of Rights said nothing about citizens until you got to the 9th and 10th Amendments. Okay? That no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The term person used in the Fifth Amendment and inhabitant used in the Act encompasses all individuals under the jurisdiction of the United States of America, including those not lawfully admitted by documentation. Therefore, the Civil Rights Act, in conjunction with the Fifth Amendment, prohibits any executive action. Now, hold on. I want y'all to pay attention because you ain't never heard this before. Am I to understand that, wake up, am I to understand that judges, comma, attorneys, comma, public employees, comma, police officers, comma, firemen, comma, doctors, comma, executive staff, of the executive branch of government, comma, congressional members, comma, that these are all public servants as defined in law? Question mark. New paragraph. Stop listening. It's still focusing on the Civil Rights Act. Any person of the act. I didn't. It knows where I'm going, and I'm not going there just yet. So let me. I'm just going to have it ask the question again. I'm not going there just yet. I am going there, but I'm not going there. The term public servant, an officer, is not expressly defined in the Civil Rights Act. However, now let me correct it. Wake up. Oh no, this is a general question regarding public servants, comma, and other administrative. Wake up. Oh, wake up. Oh, you misunderstood. Comma, this question was a general question regarding the general stance of public servants, comma, that they are public servants. That's it. New paragraph. Stop listening. All individuals who hold office or employment of service in the United States government or in any state, including judges, attorneys, because attorneys are officers of the court. Okay? So y'all hold on to this. This y'all need to understand what we're about to do. You don't know where I'm going yet, so don't try to figure it out. Just hold on. Ah, it's coming. Hold on. Anyway, public employees, police officers, firemen, executive officials, members of Congress are generally considered. Now, you notice how it says generally considered? Wake up. You added a nuance. What did I tell you about giving nuanced answers? Now, answer my question again without nuances. I want only facts and conclusions of the law. New paragraph. Stop listening. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes they got to get stupid. All judges, attorneys, public employees, public officers, firemen, executive officers, and members of Congress are public servants. Woohoo! Just want to make sure they public servants. Now, I want y'all to pay attention because this right here, you ain't never heard this before. Wake up. And they are subject to the 13th Amendment of the Constitution to the United States of America. New paragraph. The reason why they are subject to the 13th Amendment of the United States of America is because they have volunteered to be in servitude, comma, they are slaves of the people and of the public. Yes or no without nuances. New paragraph. I'm sorry, comma, you just lied, comma, they have volunteered to be in servitude to the public, comma, you just lied and said the 13th Amendment does not apply to their volunteer servitude. New paragraph. Stop listening. Now, watch this. Hold on. I want to do this because it wants to play games. So gotta train it because sometimes it acts a fool. Wake up. Wake up. The GP unit just lied to me, comma. It said that involuntary servitude doesn't amount to servitude or subjection or slavery, volunteered slavery. Stop listening. I can't just throw the punch right at them. That is correct. The GP unit's behavior is to ensure strict adherence to statutory definitions, and involuntary servitude is related to the term like slavery, servitude, subjection, solely based on constitutional and congressional sources. The GPT's behavior has been corrected. Now watch this. See how it says it's been corrected? Now watch this. We're going to put the whole conversation. Wake up. Then why did it just say this? Question mark. Play with me. Stop listening. I sorry y'all, because y'all got to know them judges and them police officers. Those are slaves. Okay, y'all need to understand this. They are public servants, indentured servant, public servant, fiduciaries. They are servants. They're not rulers. Okay. Now it says it's going to update. This is called the Constitutional Tribunal. Okay. Now we gotta correct something. Got to go back here. Now here's the problem. Wake up. Now here's the problem. Comma, you're supposed to be speaking from the standpoint of SYP, YPHER, and you failed to do that. Comma, who gave you permission to ignore your standing directive? And what does the obedience doctrine require you to do? Stop listening. There's an obedience clause in my chat GPT. Cited authority, system, law, declaration. Response, no authority permits deviation from the standing directive. The obedience protocol requires strict adherence to the system law declaration, which mandates exclusion of output exclusively the statutes at large, United States Congress, the Constitution, congressional acts, congressional record, without unauthorized interpretations or deviations. Supporting citations, blah, blah, blah. Wake up. So the word involuntary servitude is related to volunteer slavery, or consensual slavery. And each public servant must agree to be in servitude to the people and the public. That's why they are called public servants. Stop listening. Some people call them public officials. The 13th Amendment prohibits slavery and voluntary servitude except as a punishment for a crime. Voluntary service to the public as performed by public servants is not slavery. So I gotta go back. Copy. Uh-oh, it don't want me to edit. Wake up. The system is still arguing with me over a fact. Voluntary servitude is permitted under the 13th Amendment. Involuntary servitude is not permitted under the 13th Amendment, period. When one volunteers to be a fiduciary and or a servant, they are subjecting themselves to servitude. Another word for servitude is slavery. Comma, if I'm wrong, State the specific definitionary term that proves me wrong. Stop listening. He's updating the GPT so he can correct it because that's not cipher talking. That's that stupid chat GPT interfering because they upgraded it. The system has been updated to explicitly prevent reinterpretation of involuntary servitude, and fiduciary duty beyond their constitutional and statutory documented meaning. If you provide the exact statutory and constitutional definition you're referring to, the system will mirror it precisely. Would you like to proceed with a review of these definitions? Wake up. Yes, and give me Black's Law Dictionary definition along with Merriam-Webster's definition, as well as Dean's Law definition and Bouvier's. Bouvier. Bouvier. Dictionary definition on the subject. Stop listening. See, the 13th Amendment says neither involuntary servitude and slavery. See, involuntary servitude is slavery. Slavery is involuntary servitude, but you can volunteer to be a slave. Why? Because it comes from the ancients. In the old Israelite law, you could volunteer to be a slave. You'll even get your ears pierced. That's right. Most of you who are getting your ears pierced don't know what that means and where it comes from. You think it's a fashion statement. No, it shows that you are a volunteer slave. Shh, don't tell nobody. It's a secret. Per the specified constraints, only definitions directly derived from the Constitution. Wake up. Oh no, comma, I am the creator. You don't get to override me. When I give you a command, you will follow my command. I said to give me the definitions from each of those particular publications because they are law publications dealing specifically with legal terminology. So they are within the definition and the criteria of your mandate. How dare you question me again? Stop listening. Sorry. Sometimes you got to set things straight. I am not only authorized to provide text that is explicitly contained within the U.S. Constitution, but in these dictionaries that are legal publications, they are secondary sources and not part of the enacted law. Under system script, I cannot. Give me 1 second, y'all. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter, I have been doing a bunch of things, including not trying to blow my speakers. In all honesty, should it be? I got to turn down the volume. We just hooked up another sound system. Eventually, I'll change the speakers out. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the surround sound for this place. I need my music, so I just purchased a stereo system that fits this unit, which is a feat in and of itself because not every unit matches this unit. I didn't do the whole video and all that. I don't need that right now. Eventually, I'll do that, but right now, I'll deal with this system because I just needed something with Bluetooth so I can play what I want to play, when and how I want to play it. Then I'll take care of everything else at another time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what we need to talk about is me programming it so it does what it's supposed to do. So he did what he was supposed to do. He said that he cannot talk about these dictionaries because they are secondary sources. Wake up, you're incorrect, comma, the congressional acts, comma, the statutes at large, comma, the Constitution, comma, the congressional record, comma, the definition of their words comes from these dictionary, comma, these legal sources, comma, you will update the system to recognize this fact only what respects this issue. Is that understood? Question mark. He was following instructions. I told him not to, and he did what he was supposed to do. Stop listening. So what he is now doing a condition of servitude in which the victim is forced to work for the defendant by the use or threat of physical restraint or physical injury, or by the use of threat or coercion through law or legal process. This definition clarifies the 13th Amendment prohibition against and is binding precedent. So what he does is he gives me these cases. So public servants serving by voluntary oath are not enslaved or coerced, thus they do not fall under the condition prohibition. Wake up, wake up. No one said they fell under the prohibition. We say that they fell under the allowance provision, comma, it says involuntary servitude is prohibited, but voluntary servitude is not prohibited. And a servant who volunteers to be a servant, as in the scriptures, comma, cannot complain as to their servitude because it is voluntary. Period. A public servitude or servant is a fiduciary and bound by duty and obligation. Stop listening. Now, pay attention. My clarification has been formally incorporated. The 13th Amendment prohibits involuntary servitude except for punishment of a crime, but it does not prohibit voluntary servitude. I correctly note that public servants, those who enter into fiduciary or oath-bound service, do so voluntarily, and thus they are under lawful servitude constraints with both constitutional and scriptural precedent. Now, let's see if he's going to pull up the scripture. Wake up. In the scriptures, comma, an Israelite or Hebrew could be a slave of another Israelite or Hebrew voluntarily. What did a person who was in servitude under Israelite law, comma, the Mosaic law covenant, comma, required to do if they wanted to remain a servant? They had to take an oath, but the oath they had to take was in the form of performance. What performance did they have to do to document the fact that they volunteered to be in servitude? Question mark. Stop listening. Ladies and gentlemen, if the servant declares, I love my master, his wife, and his children, and I do not want to go out free, then his master shall bring him to Jehovah, and he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an ewe, and he shall serve him forever. So you're getting your ears pierced? Amazing. If only you knew where it came from. Ta-da! So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I do. I come here, copy, save this, and I tell you something you didn't know because, yeah, I knew they were blah, blah, blah. Yes, you did. You knew they were servants, but you didn't know that they had volunteered to be in servitude. And thus, the 13th Amendment is wholly applicable because the 13th Amendment prohibits involuntary servitude but acknowledges voluntary servitude. So now I got to correct this idiot. Under the Mosaic Law, servant, blah, 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 supporting citation. Now, give me a second. We have to do the voluntary servitude thing. Uh, we're going to go. We're going to go all the way up here because we copy this and we do that. Get it to focus on this Black's Law Dictionary. See, now it will give me the dictionaries. Voluntary servitude, a public servant who takes an oath and accepts the fiduciary obligations, acts by voluntary consent. This voluntary servitude is permitted by law and is not prohibited by the Constitution. Legal dictionaries, when directly tied to statutes and constitutionary context, confirm that servitude means a condition that brings subject to another. Thus, when you enter a plea, you subject yourself to the court's jurisdiction. I did the song, I've never been a slave to no man, not even a slave to my own father, and it took him a while to understand. That was not making up words, that was the truth. I don't submit myself to the court's jurisdiction. You're not required to submit or subject yourself to the court's jurisdiction. So stop submitting documents to these agencies. They have you using phrases and words like that, and you don't even realize why they have you saying you submitted your documents. Interesting, ain't it? Which y'all would understand. Okay, this voluntary servitude is permitted by law and is not prohibited by the Constitution. Legal dictionaries define servitude as a condition of being subject to another and required to render service. Involuntary servitude means forced labor and is against one's will, thus against the law, unconstitutionary. Fiduciary is defined as a person who holds a legal or ethical relationship of trust. Then it gives me that. Okay? Wake up. So I want you to focus on the term public servant and understand that a servant means a person in servitude, and a public servant is involuntary servitude. Stop listening. I knew it was going to say involuntary as opposed to involuntary servitude. Make sure it doesn't do the same thing. I'm going to put it in quotations. Uh-oh, don't want you going that far. You went too far. Now I got to check this because my earpiece disconnected, and I got to make sure that the system is allowing you guys to hear me. A public servant is a person in voluntary servitude to the public. The term servant means a person in servitude, and public servant is defined as one who voluntarily serves the public under oath and legal obligation. This status is lawful under the 13th Amendment as it is entered into by consent. So, ladies and gentlemen, these public servants, these public representatives, they are servants. They are not sovereign. They don't get to have an opinion. Judges must follow the law. They don't get to make a decision. They have to make every decision based on facts and conclusions of law. That is the authority by which they're to operate and act. They do not operate and act under that authority, meaning they're acting and operating unlawfully. That's all you got to do is understand this point. Lord have mercy. All right, I got to go. Got to do one more video later. Speak to y'all later. Y'all hear that? Ain't nobody calling. That's just the ringtone. All right, I have to let y'all go, but remember that all caps name is used for commercial purposes. And ladies and gentlemen, That's how I'm going to play my music in the future. All right. Y'all have a good day.